Welcome back to the MAGA Arizona Agenda 2027 podcast with Congressman David Schweikert.
Hey, thank you for having me. As you know, I love doing this with you because, let's be honest, you're a fellow geek.
Yes. Yeah,
but you're also good at technical. And so often, when you get the politicians sitting there, you talk about fluffy things or things that enrage people, but none of those end up being things that actually make our lives better.
Yeah, there's a few hot button cultural topics that get a lot of attention, but then a lot of the things that are fiscal or regulatory that actually affect life in a lot of ways don't get covered well.
And I can give you a secret.
Okay.
Why do so many politicians like to talk about the hot button social issues? They're important. Please understand, they're important. It's because they're 80% issues. You can enrage the people you want to enrage. They'll often give you money because you enraged them. And at the end of the day, it's not something that really changes your economics, your society, your wage growth, those things. But those things are much more complex. And I think the public, we see some polling, the public's tired of being manipulated. Stop pandering to crazy. Let's actually start talking about actual policy that changes our lives.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I've always wanted the MAGA label to become American people first. Because so often when we say the way it is now, the groups, the institutions, some of the think tanks, the others, I think pervert it. And it becomes about their organization instead of the individual Americans who are poorer today than they were a few years ago.
Yeah,
so how do we get the movement to start being about the people?
Yes. So let's segue into an area that impacts people today, energy.
Oh.
And there's several parts to it. There's the electrical part with the really stupid green energy policies here in Arizona, our utilities and our regulatory that's pushing up the cost. But then there's the big one, the California refinery shutdown. Unfortunately, Arizona depends on half of our fuel coming from California refineries. That Governor Newsom is running into the ground, and it hurts Nevada even harder.
And it's more. And I would say, okay, let's actually do hydrocarbons, fuel first, and come back because this is one of my favorite subjects. I want to walk through some of the things I'm doing that's different than any other office. Last Friday, I wrote a letter to President Trump saying, please execute the Defense Production Act.
Yes.
And do not let them shut down refineries.
Yes.
And I think it's perfectly legitimate. Technically we're sort of in a military conflict right now. How do we use actually that authority, which is unique to the president, to stop the California craziness of shutting down refineries? We wrote a paper about 2 years ago. It was more of a blog thing, talking about if the current mix of fuel that comes into Arizona. Remember, a bunch of the California refinery fuel is also a type of refined diesel for jet airplanes, those things. So
yes.
The mix is a little more complicated. We had a model that gas prices could go up $2 a gallon just by scarcity. Just by California scarcity. 2 years, maybe longer, but 2 years ago, we started doing some reaching out to like Kinder Morgan, some of the pipeline companies, and they're structured as a company and then limited liability partnerships and LLPs. And the concept was we desperately need another 1 or 2 pipelines coming from El Paso, Texas. I actually flew to Tucson, flew to El Paso once, and we had these discussions, and they were very polite. And then I realized they already knew what they were doing. They hadn't announced it.
Yes.
But right now, if you actually go down south of Tucson, actually maybe the construction now is already made north of Tucson. They're using the railroad right away for another pipeline coming in from El Paso. That was, and I let them know you'll have my love, gratitude, and I will defend you politically.
Yes.
Because we need to actually start getting more of that capacity. I think the run right now, and I'm embarrassed because I didn't go back and double check this, is an 18-inch line specifically, really more gasoline. We probably still need one more line to come up, to hit the storage that's in Pima County, and then get it up to the storage that's up here in Maricopa County. We also then have to deal with the craziness of our blends, and we've been reaching out. We've also been reaching out to the EPA saying, look, you just changed. Remember, a week ago, my friend who's the head of the EPA, basically they rewrote some of the Obama era rules. We need now to push as a member of Congress, think, okay, you've changed the rules, you've changed your findings. Does that allow us to change now our blends? How often have you done this? You look at the price of gasoline, you're in Maricopa County. You cross the county, so therefore you're in a new air quality management from the EPA. Suddenly the price is down 30 cents.
Yes.
That's often just the blends that are in there. And this makes some of the corn farmers unhappy with me and some of those because they want to be selling their ethanol. And there's a whole very uncomfortable discussion, if you ever have with someone from Iowa, saying you do realize we get the same BTUs out as it took to BTUs in. This is an insane tax spend, but it buys votes in the first caucus state. Hydrocarbons, hopefully we can slow down, and the president will help us slow down the shutting down of refineries in California. Get more of the distillates coming in from Texas. Arizona has tried repeatedly for 50 years to build a refinery. It has failed every time. A combination of refineries require actually huge amounts of water. Now there are some new cracking technologies, but you need to change some of the EPA rules. I was heavily involved 30 years ago trying to help a refinery go up in Yuma, and the financing packages all collapsed. If there really is going to be some new technologies, much higher pressure cracking of the chains, uses less water, and actually, oddly enough, may use less actual energy because you burn a lot of energy to get the energy.
Yeah, refining.
So we always have to stay vigilant on that. The other thing that's also happening in our transportation grid here, this is just transportation, is the electrification. That's transportation fuel coming off of our electrical grid. And we got to keep being prepared for that. Whether it be the Amazon trucks, whether it be the Tesla products, whether it also be, now we're starting to see the new long haul trucks starting, because we have this unique place in the economics. We are functionally the exact drive length that I guess a driver can do between California ports and our warehouses. And it's apparently cheaper to warehouse in far west Maricopa County than it is to keep things in California.
Yeah, they're actually moving from the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside area to Buckeye because of California taxation on warehouse inventory and all the other things.
Yeah, there's more, because remember, there's things that go in. It's more than just a product coming in and getting stacked on the shelves. In today's world, it's divided, maybe value added, combined with a special purchase. And I have an absolute fixation, if you ever look at some of my floor speeches, on the fact that it's illegal right now to modernize a port. So, United States has the least efficient ports in the industrialized world. Because we are so inefficient in our ports, there's some products where our product pricing works in international markets, but our cost to get it on the ship and get it out of here is all screwed up. So if affordability is part of your passion,
That's it is.
you get to affordability by making things better, faster, cheaper. You raise wages, and then you allow the economy to constantly be adopting technology that can get that product on the shelf or to your house cheaper. Except we keep that illegal. whether it be the port or the rail, you do realize and Republicans are also to sin on this. This was a Joe Biden thing, and we haven't fixed it yet. Our reading of the Defense Production Act, and look, you get some of the credit for this idea, is we can override the California government's regulation and stall it. But it's more than just having bunker oil for ship.
Jet fuel for aircraft.
Yeah, but it's so much more. But you also need the economy to work. If you're going to have a society that has the cash flow to pay for its military, let alone everything else. And so you have to hit everything right. When the president talks about affordability, what's the most powerful thing you can do in affordability? And this comes back to even our fuel conversation.
Well, lower energy costs, I would say land costs.
Well,
in the West, it's water costs, but that's probably.
And I would say you actually on the hierarchy, I would start with wage growth. Now, wage growth, and here's the problem: is you get idiot politicians say wage growth. All those things are inputs into being able to be paid more.
Yes.
And then you have the whole capital stack issue of can a business invest in the technology so they make more, whatever, and they pay you more. If
the company's land, energy, and other input costs, material costs go down, but they can still sell at the same price domestically, internationally. They can afford more wages.
Well, but you got to be.
But they also want more productivity.
Yeah, you got to have the productivity, because what ends up happening in the classic economic model is, they're getting more profit by not having to do anything. We can invest in a piece of equipment that's more efficient. We'll put them out of business. So that's why you always need industry, businesses, and whether it be a service business or whether it be, you're an accountant or a manufacturer, you're constantly adopting the latest technology because you'd like your competition not to take your book of business.
Yes.
And trying to explain that to people.
So I have one solution I already proposed online and one that's kind of new. I just talking to you and thinking. So one was Alberta, Canada has like the world's third largest oil reserves, huge natural gas along with British Columbia, but British Columbia is not letting them export it. Quebec doesn't let them export it, so they can only send it south. What if we got an oil pipeline through conservative red Republican mountain states to
Absolutely.
Arizona, Nevada, or both, either or both, and use that water, that brackish, semi-salty water that industry could desalinate and build a refinery in, say, northern Arizona or Nevada, and then that fuels our supply, as well as we sell it back to California. If they shut their refineries down, fine, we'll build one and we'll sell to them.
Most likely you would end up doing the refinery closer to the Canadian border, both because of temperatures and access to water.
Okay.
Desalinization, even with the newest technology, because remember, there's been sort of a revolution in the last 10 years. So if something's more than 10, 15 years old on a desalinization plant, they're actually rebuilding them now because they require stunning amounts of power. And remember, the hydrocarbons that are often up there in Alberta, those great natural gas resources, tar sands, and those do require much more technology for extraction.
And processing.
And processing. And fracking and horizontal drilling still is, in the money. Its production is still just remarkably good. There's fields also in New Mexico that look like they have some additional resources to exploit. I'm sorry, as I told you, I'm fascinated with this stuff. So we've learned you're going the right way, but you want a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I don't want to completely rely on oil refined in Texas and piped through New Mexico. I want to be 100%.
It's so you're hunting for everything, and in many ways it's outrageous. Most people don't realize California, particularly
Kern Valley has huge
resources,
huge oil. There's a lot of natural gas. There's a lot of offshore too in Southern California that they refuse. They still have the old wells, but they won't drill any new ones. And they had a massive number of refineries, and they still have a bunch, but they're closing.
Well, and there's papers right now of the new horizontal drilling technology, if they were allowed to do it, could renew many of their fields that have been, because we can go much deeper, so we have the resources. What happens when the problem isn't the professionals in the extraction world? It's the idiots in government.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
No, I as a professional saw that all the time, every day.
But trial lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
we do some insane things. We have equal access to justice. We have all these things in statute where we functionally pay law firms to sue us. But I need you to go further. So we're talking hydrocarbons. Why isn't it copper? Why isn't it other rare earths? We've built a structure where we're a country of lawyers and litigation. And so many of the countries we compete with are countries of engineers.
Yes.
That's a real problem.
I agree. The other solution is if we have all this Venezuelan oil or maybe other sources, we bring it up into Mexico, the Gulf of California, and you build a terminal in Sonora, Rocky Point, Penasco, and you have a terminal that receives the oil there, a refinery there, and you pipe the refined fuel into Arizona, and let the Mexicans deal with it. But they deal with the dirty jobs, but they get jobs.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one I have not actually read an article or seen on.
Or you could do it the other way around, and you get the fuel from Alberta, Texas, and then you export it through Mexico.
Well, but remember the distance of moving crude compared to moving the distillates.
Okay.
Because once you have the distillates, saying, hey, this market here needs jet fuel, but this market needs unleaded fuel. How often do you get the idiot politicians that go, we're going to deregulate? That's wonderful. How about the term we as conservatives say, we're going to smart regulate? Mm-hmm. If I have technology that says you absolutely get left alone, and if you screw up, we catch you, but if you're playing by the rules, you never, ever, 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 ever have to deal with government. I have a YouTube video I did like 10 years ago, and it's called Environmental Crowdsourcing. And the idea is, because you're a big motorcycle guy,
No.
You want to own a motorcycle paint shop.
Okay, I see.
What if you could open your paint shop and not have to deal with the county air quality, the EPA, the engineer, getting the engineer stamps, all these things, saying, look, you put up your paint booth, you have your filters, and if it doesn't work, you get caught because there's sensors instead of the big tower sensors we use now, which cost like $1 million a year, and when they go off, they sanction the entire area or whole portions or the entire county. What if you could say, oh, it went off, we got some clowns painting cars in their backyard. Guys, you got to have a booth. Or, hey, your filter isn't working, and it solves the problem. Trial lawyers hate this because the trial lawyers want years of bad acts so they can sue you. The regulators hate this because the regulators make money on file cabinets full of paperwork. The consulting engineers make money because they go along, you have to stamp the letter and this and that. What if you could just use technology saying, you're an American, you're trying to be an entrepreneur. If, we have to protect the common, water errors, is the common. If you're not violating it, you get left alone. And now take that principle to everything from electricity generation to other things. Smart regulation, use technology to put the bureaucracy out of business. And you can still keep the air and the water and those things clean.
Yes.
Because you move to technology, not bureaucrats.
I firmly agree. I 100% behind you. Yeah. You deregulate, but also smart regulate.
Yeah.
You right size or update whatever.
Electricity is often a mixed portfolio. For Arizona, I believe our sin for the last 10 years is we didn't actually pay enough attention to base load.
Yes.
So now we all have these peaking energy sources, and yay, peaking energy sources. But we need more base load,
especially for onshoring industry and all the.
Oh yeah, well just for where we're at, because there's some great economic papers that say societies that have enough power are the ones that maximize economic growth.
Yes.
Now look, there's quirky things. I got passed when President Trump was kind enough to sign it. A pump storage, so I think it's on Canyon Lake. We have this big cliff, and in the afternoon when you have lots of photovoltaic solar power, it almost goes down to zero. Matter of fact, we've been paid sometimes to take it off the grid because we have too much power. So you turn these turbine pumps, you pump the water up the cliff, and when the sun goes down, you smash it back down.
Yes.
And
Old
you turn
technology.
old school technology, but you basically turned a little lake on top of the cliff, you turned it into a battery.
But cheaper, probably more environmentally friendly battery. Yeah.
Oh, but the concept we have to do that is also shows you the false fragility of what we've done on, a lot of our green energy portfolio. Is okay, some of that's wonderful. Some of the photovoltaic is getting remarkably efficient. There's another generation coming that's going to put a lot of the solar farms out of business because this one is too good. But turns out the sun goes down.
Yes.
And we haven't worked through the portfolio basis.
Yeah, the peak of the sun is like noon, but the peak of the heat's like 2 or 3, and it goes on even after the sunset. Like it takes time to cool down. So you still need your AC going on after the sun sets. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's actually more discussion on this. And see, we all, because we live in the desert, think about air conditioning. Turns out, in the next generation of factories, have you ever heard this story of factories that have no lights? Because it's mostly autonomous. Autonomous factories can often run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the shifts of the workers are the workers in the management booths.
And that's easier to shift over without stopping production.
Oh, but it's crazier than that. There's some great articles out there of the managers, the people watching the factory floor, are doing it from terminals in their home.
Okay, I can do that.
But no, look, you still got to watch it. You still got to be smart enough to move things around. But that's actually starting to change, saying, okay, this isn't a factory that opens at 6 a.m. and closes at 6:30.
Runs 24/7.
It's 24-hour because the capital equipment is so expensive. You have to run it the full cycle to amortize its costs. All of a sudden, you just change the electricity portfolio in that marketplace.
Now you need a base load that's consistently there.
So there's more to this than just, we need to run our air conditioning. It may be how we run the production in our society. I believe what you're doing is really important. Because you're adding some intellectual gravitas, if that's a word, but intellectual to the movement. Too many of our people, they know they're pissed off about something, but they haven't been engaged saying, the solutions are actually around us. You just have to read.
Yes.
And think them through.
More natural gas, especially in the short, medium term, to get us that base load power. We get those small modular reactors as soon as possible, and maybe start with military bases, reservations, wherever it's easier to build them, or data centers have their own.
Yeah, look, let's do this backwards, because data centers, sorry guys, you really got to generate. You cannot do what's called transfer cost. You can't leap onto the grid, basically take every volt and watt out of the system. So therefore, those people who say I'm going to use variable pricing and those things, all that value is gone. They got to cover their own costs. Now with that, there is a chance that those data centers, if you design the grid and their obligations to it the right way, there's a way they could be positive. They probably should be in more rural counties, because rural counties have been decimated by the Obama and Biden administration. I mean, how many, how much coal are we extracting? How much timber are we extracting? Do we still have a paper plant? All these things, people don't understand how miserable the economics are in much of rural Arizona, because their experience with is, I go up there when it's hot and I stay in my cabin. We have counties that are going broke. We have counties where they can't keep their young people there because they don't have work. A data center does not actually employ many people, but it is a big property taxpayer.
I see.
So you want the property tax. They got to generate their own power, and my hierarchy is more difficult. Water usage, I'm very concerned about. We're told, because we've already had presentations now, that in about the next 36 months, there's a new generation of chips. So actually the wafer chips use dramatically less power and produce much less heat. Could you say, we're willing to work with you if you meet this hierarchy of requirements, but one of those requirements is you're going to use the lowest heat generation, the very best technology. So you use less water, less power, but we still get the property taxes from it.
Yes.
And so this is how you you future-proof parts of your economy.
And I would say on that, I agree with you. If they can build their own modular reactors or gas, whatever, and sell excess to the surrounding community, so they're actually helping the energy problem. They use desalination for that brackish reservoirs for their own water, and they can sell any excess. So that's a lot of it's in rural parts of Arizona that have that brackish waters aquifers, the reservations. And then also, if you put in cooler areas and mountainous areas that may not have the same economy as the Phoenix Valley, they save energy on cooling.
Yeah, I still want to be very sensitive. They do not get to deplete aquifers.
Yes.
You do not get to deplete aquifers.
But why can't they just keep it cycling?
No, they can't. You can't. Now you're always gonna have some steam burn off. But for all of us that remember our high school, engineering class, your heat exchanger, you basically consolidate back. It's actually how your air conditioner works at home, except it's using a gas. And so there's ways to do this, but you got to get very knowledgeable on the technology, and trying to get electeds to actually sit and read an engineering binder, or just have folks like yourself that have the engineering backgrounds and say, look, here's just our principles. Meet these principles and we're not going to oppose you. Don't meet these principles and we are going to oppose you.
Yeah, make clear
simple.
rules so the companies know what they're going into, the investors, the bankers, they all know what to expect, and it's reliable, it's consistent. Thank you for joining us today on the MAGA Arizona 2027 Agenda podcast with Congressman David Schweikert.
Hey, look, I love this. We don't do enough of the technical discussion to show there are solutions.
Yes.
They're complex, but we can do it. We can make the future amazing.
Yes, we can.
Thanks.
Thank you. And please like and subscribe for future episodes.